This week on Bedtime Stories, we take a closer look at one of the most infamous alleged military cover-ups ever connected to World War II, a mysterious experiment said to have made an entire naval vessel vanish from sight. According to the legend, the operation ended in disaster, leaving sailors mentally shattered, physically altered, and in some cases subjected to horrors almost impossible to comprehend. Tonight, we investigate the terrifying story known as the Philadelphia experiment. Before we begin, thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring today's episode. When researching strange historical mysteries and paranormal stories, I often find myself browsing obscure and unfamiliar parts of the internet. Some of those sites can be risky, but using Surfshark VPN helps keep me protected online. Its clean web system blocks malicious websites, phishing attempts, trackers, and other online threats before they become a problem. One of the things I appreciate most is Surfshark's strict no-logs policy, meaning none of my browsing data is collected or stored. If you're looking for a reliable VPN, Surfshark is not only extremely fast, but also offers coverage across more than 100 countries worldwide. For a limited time, Surfshark is offering an exclusive holiday deal. Visit surfshark.deal/bedtimestories and use the promo code bedtimestories to receive additional free months and protect your online privacy. Music. On the night of October 28, 1943, Carl Allen and several fellow crewmen aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth stood watching the waters near the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. Positioned roughly 100 meters away from them floated the USS Eldridge, a newly built cannon-class destroyer escort. Only moments earlier, the vessel's deck had been filled with activity as crew members hurried across its upper levels. Then, without explanation, everyone had been ordered below deck. Now the warship rested silently among the surrounding vessels, eerily still and seemingly abandoned. Allen and the other sailors quietly discussed what they believed they were about to witness, though none of them truly understood what was happening. Rumors had circulated through the harbor for weeks, whispers of unusual government experiments and secret naval technology. The conversation suddenly stopped when a deep, vibrating hum began echoing from the Eldridge. At first, the men thought smoke was rising from the destroyer, but after staring more carefully, they realized the ship was becoming surrounded by a strange green haze with no visible source. The glowing mist spread outward, gradually swallowing the entire hull and superstructure. Then a blinding flash illuminated the harbor. Seconds later, to the complete disbelief of everyone watching, the USS Eldridge had disappeared entirely. Only the shimmering green fog remained suspended over the water. A stunned silence spread among the nearby crews. Allen reportedly leaned over the railing and cautiously stretched his hand toward the strange vapor. Instead of passing through it, he claimed his hand was somehow pushed back. Several uneasy minutes passed before another burst of brilliant light erupted across the harbor. As the flash faded, the USS Eldridge had reappeared in exactly the same position where it had vanished. Almost immediately, orders rang out across the docks instructing nearby sailors and civilians to clear the area. Allen watched as naval officers, scientists, and technicians boarded waiting launches and hurried toward the destroyer escort. Something about the ship now seemed deeply unsettling. Decades later, Carl Allen, who would later use the name Carlos Allende, claimed the events of that night haunted him for the rest of his life. By 1986, he was living in near isolation in a quiet rural town in Colorado, separated from much of his family and suffering from worsening health problems. Convinced that his life was nearing its end, he eventually agreed to speak with investigative journalist Jim Frazier. During their interview, Allende described what he believed was a classified military experiment involving electromagnetic fields powerful enough to interfere with the very laws of physics. According to him, the USS Eldridge had not only become invisible, but had also been transported hundreds of miles away in an instant. In his view, the experiment itself had technically worked. The true disaster came afterward. When military personnel and technicians boarded the Eldridge after the test, they allegedly discovered scenes of unimaginable horror inside the vessel. Electrical power throughout the ship had completely failed, forcing investigators to search the darkened corridors using flashlights. Some crew members were unconscious and impossible to wake. Others stood perfectly motionless, frozen in place exactly as they had been during the experiment. Those who remained conscious were screaming in pain or speaking incoherently, unable to form proper sentences. As the search continued deeper into the lower decks, the discoveries became increasingly horrific. One sailor was reportedly found fused into a steel wall, his arm physically merged with the ship's metal structure. Another crewman appeared partially embedded into the floor itself. Several others were said to have become trapped within the hull of the vessel. According to Allende, some bodies had been twisted and mutilated beyond recognition. As surviving sailors slowly regained awareness, panic and confusion spread throughout the Eldridge. Many of the crew allegedly began suffering from severe mental instability and bizarre long-term side effects. Some experienced sudden episodes of uncontrollable rage before abruptly returning to normal with no memory of their actions. Others entered what Allende described as deep freeze states, becoming completely immobile for extended periods like living statues. More disturbing rumors claim that a few sailors vanished entirely. One man supposedly walked directly through a solid wall before disappearing forever. Another story claimed 2 sailors vanished during a violent fight at a local bar. There were even tales of a former crew member suddenly bursting into flames while trapped in one of these frozen states. Allende insisted these effects were not psychological trauma, but physical consequences caused by exposure to an extremely powerful electromagnetic field. In his opinion, the experiment had somehow pushed the sailors partially outside normal reality. He explained that the project was supposedly based on theories attempting to unify gravity and electromagnetism through the use of enormous amounts of electrical energy. The intended purpose, he claimed, was to bend light around the ship and make it invisible to enemy detection systems during wartime. But if the story was true, the experiment accomplished far more than simple invisibility. Several sailors later claimed the USS Eldridge had briefly appeared near the naval base at Norfolk, Virginia, almost 300 miles away from Philadelphia. Witnesses there allegedly reported seeing the destroyer materialize before vanishing again moments later. If accurate, the implications were extraordinary. The experiment may have temporarily teleported the ship itself. Despite the enduring legend, however, official evidence strongly contradicts the story. Naval records indicate the USS Eldridge spent much of late 1943 operating near the Bahamas and never docked in Philadelphia during the alleged experiment. Records from the SS Andrew Furuseth also place it far from the naval yard at the time. Although Carl Allen genuinely served aboard the Andrew Furuseth during World War II, many people who knew him described him as imaginative and prone to exaggeration. In some interviews, he even appeared to admit inventing parts of a story before later retracting those statements. Eventually, overwhelmed by criticism and skepticism, Allen withdrew from public attention and refused further interviews until his death in 1994. Even so, certain aspects of the legend remained strangely fascinating. During World War II, Allied navies really did conduct degaussing experiments designed to protect ships from magnetic mines using electromagnetic systems and electrical cables wrapped around hulls. Similar tests reportedly caused unusual side effects among some sailors exposed to strong electrical fields. Over the years, additional individuals also came forward claiming to have witnessed aspects of the Philadelphia experiment firsthand, including former servicemen who insisted the USS Eldridge truly disappeared. Whether the story was an elaborate fabrication, a misunderstanding fueled by wartime secrecy, or evidence of hidden military technology gone terribly wrong, the Philadelphia experiment continues to stand as one of the most disturbing conspiracy legends of the modern era. Some believe it was a failed experiment the military desperately tried to erase from history. Others see it as nothing more than Cold War paranoia blended with science fiction and rumor. But regardless of the truth, the legend of the USS Eldridge still lingers decades later, a haunting story of secrecy, fear, and a possible experiment that pushed far beyond human understanding.